Hey guys, how's it going? So today we're going to be making some Nightmare / Herobust style trap. Check out the link in the description for the entire song on my SoundCloud and be sure to follow, like, do all that stuff. And yeah, let's just get right into it. So yeah, that's what we're going to be making today. Alright, so the first section we're going to have a look at here is all of my synths, and alone, soloed out, they sound like this. So the first thing we'll have a look at is the group as a whole. All I have on it is a sidechain compressor to my kick and to my snare. That's literally it. And then getting into my lead synth. This is how it sounds soloed out. And then in the second half of the drop, I just froze and flattened this entire thing and boosted it up an octave. And then in the actual MIDI clip, you can see I have the pitch bend going all the way up, and that's being affected by the pitch knob here, only going up 2 semitones. And then here's the actual notes also, in case you wanted those. So to get into the patch itself, in Serum, all I had was the default saw wave boosted up to 12 unison, increased the detune, and then FM'd it to this square wave that's also boosted up an octave with this LFO FMing it. And then we have this Combs filter that I don't think is actually being modulated by anything. And then in the effects section, hyperdimension expander, distortion, the diode 1 setting here, compressor, and reverb filter. Now, without all the effects that I have here, this is actually what the patch sounds like. And as you can see, it's real empty. So first thing I did was add this echo, switch this section to time, and put it at 1.38 milliseconds. And I think I increased the feedback a little bit and turned down the dry wet to give it kind of a metallic sound, and it sounds like this. And then in the EQ8 here and under format, you can find this singing A filter, and gives it, I don't know, kind of a nice little sound that I like. Sounds like this. I like the format kind of sound. And then added some reverb. And then OTT, which is where we're going to get a lot of how the sound is actually being made. Then lastly in EQ, just taking out some of the low end and some of the mid-high end. And then we layered it with this sound, which is the same exact patch, just brought down 3 octaves and then 4 octaves on the square wave. And we didn't add the EQ format at all, and no reverb. And it's, again, just literally an exact copy. And then the second half, again, the MIDI clip is just boosted up an octave. Then we have our horns here. Oh, I should give you a sample of what that also sounds like. Sorry. Way more detuned and distorted. And then we have my horns here, which is just a bunch of samples that I pitched in audio clips. Sounds like this. And all I did for this was add OTT, reverb, and EQ8. Then we have this little monster growl here to fill up some of the empty space. And there's quite a few effects I'll go through here, but this is how this sounds. And in the patch itself, I have this self-made wavetable that I might put out, I might not, haven't really decided yet, being FM'd to this digital wavetable, and all of these FFT wavetables sound great being FM to. I increased the octave 2 octaves, and then this is the main LFO that's modulating everything. Added a high pass notch filter, so this is kind of what it looks like. Increasing the wavetable also. And then in the effects section here, hyperdimension expander, distortion, just regular tube distortion, a multiband compressor, an EQ that's actually just a low pass filter, taking out some of the high end at the beginning and the end of the actual patch, and then a little bit of reverb filter being mixed in. Now, without all the effects that we have here, this is actually what the sound sounds like. Very empty and dull. So again, the first thing I added was echo, left it on sync but just boosted it up all the way, and then added a tiny bit of feedback and a little bit of the dry wet. Then added OTT, and we're starting to get our sound again. Then this fat basses kind of rack that I made basically just has saturator, OTT, this crazy EQ here, a phaser, the dimension expander plugin that's free to get online, and then a vocoder. And it sounds like this. Then I just froze and flattened it, and so I could take off the entire tail end here so it wouldn't muddy up the mix. And this is it. The next sound I have is this little vocal chop that everyone uses. I love that sound. Just have some OTT on it, a little bit of EQ. Then the next sound is just some white noise, again to fill up some of the empty areas of the track. And all I'm doing is EQing, taking out the low, some of the mid-highs, and then boosting the highs. Then I have this subtle little ARP playing below. And here's the chord in case you wonder what it is. And in massive, it's just a square wave, and then here in the fourth envelope, boosted the attack all the way up, turned the decay down a little bit, and took down the level all the way to give it a little plucky sound, pitched it up an octave, and then added some reverb, OTT, and EQ8, taking out the lows and dipping in the mids. Then I have a low and high version of the sample I got from the original song. And I have it on pro settings, took it down 13 semitones, added this simple delay to give it kind of a little bit of a robot-y effect, and OTT sounds like. And then just copy and made it a little bit louder on the main vocal you can hear here. Then lastly, I just have this little Virtual Riot sound, laughing sample pack that I took off of Splice, I think. And I just have OTT and an EQ on it. So yeah, that's it for the entire synth section. Alright, so the next section we're going to have a look at here is my kick, my snare, and my sub. And soloed out, they sound like this. Then they just repeat for the second half of the drop. So the first thing we'll have a look at is my kick section, nothing on the group, and here is the main kick that I have, that's what actually everything is being sidechained to. just a super basic 808. Then I actually layered it with this more stompy kind of drum and took out all of the bass and low end in it. And just copied the exact same pattern. Then my snare is just a crane sample, taking out some of the low end. Sounds like this. And then I layered that with a little clap sample that I had, again taking out all the low end. Then in the subsection, just have this sidechain compressor to my kick, and we have two layers here. First of all, there's this one, which is just my regular sub bass, nothing but a sine wave, and this is what the actual patch looks like, or the actual notes. Then to get into the patch again, just messing with envelope 1, giving it a really long decay and a little bit of release. And then I also have this exact same one, just boosted up an octave in the pitch bend, so it gives kind of that dropping effect in the pitch section here. And soloed out, they sound like this. Just a super clean sub bass. And then I layered it with this really distorted version of that. So again, all I did was keep the exact same patch, turn on this filter to cut off some of the high end, add a lot of tube distortion, multi-band compression, and then another EQ to take out all of the sub bass and even some of the high end. And this is how this patch sounds. So yeah, that's it for my kick and my sub bass section. Alright, so the last section we're going to get into is my percussion and effects, and soloed out, they sound like this. Alright, so to first get into it, we'll start with the percussion sounds, and I just have this EQ first of all, taking out some of the harsher frequencies and the mid-high frequencies, and a kick and snare sidechain. The first sound I have here is a crash cymbal, again taking out the low end, dipping a little in the mid-highs. Sounds like this. The next sound I have is this little bell that sometimes layers the snare drum, and it sounds like this. And I had to adjust it so it would actually be centered in the mix and wouldn't be either left or right ear leaning. And again, taking out low, taking out some of the mid. Then I have this ride cymbal playing all the way throughout and taking out a lot of the low and mid frequencies and even dipping some of the highs. So it's very subtle but filling up a lot of that empty space. And that's just constantly throughout. Then I made this little hi-hat loop out of some of Ableton's just stock hi-hat sounds, some of the best hi-hats you can find. You can make really nice loops, and it's just 3 of them, these 3 right here, and they sound like this. And again, taking out the low, dipping even in some of the highs. Then next sound I have here is a reverse crash cymbal that's leading up to the second half of the drop, taking out some of the lows, and it sounds like this. Then the next one is this little snare loop I made. First of all, it's these snare drums that's a completely separate, completely separate loop, taking out some of the lows and the mid frequencies, and then this patch that I made that's also pitch volume or pitch automated and sounds like this. And that's just at the end of every drop. Then in the second half of the drop, I just added this little loop of hi-hats. Added an auto pan, so it's kind of panning left to right in your ears, and then also taking out some of the low and all the mid frequencies. Then in the effects section, I have just this crowd screaming, also sidechain to kick and snare, taking out the lows, dipping a bit in the mid highs, and it sounds like this. And that's just playing constantly throughout, again to fill up lots of the empty space. And then in the second half of the drop, I just have this siren, again taking out the low, dipping in the mid sections, and it sounds like this. So yeah, that's how I made this cool little trap remix. Again, check out the description to look for the full song, and be sure to like, comment, subscribe. I always like hearing your guys' comments on what I should do next, so be sure to leave suggestions below. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.